Hey guys, my name is Dr. Casey Bearden. I just did the podcast with Jason Duncan on the root of all success. I would highly encourage you to tune in and listen up for some health related tips on how you can make your health insurance work better and in your favor, short term and long term.
Welcome to the root of all success with the Real Jason Duncan. A podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs unlocked success and how their stories can help you do the same. Introducing TEDx speaker, mastermind leader, author, entrepreneur, cigar aficionado, motorcycle enthusiast, and host of The Root of All Success, the Real Jason Duncan. The Real Jason Duncan.
So you think the modern healthcare system is not just bad, you believe it's a scam. Is that what you're saying?
Much like college education has become a total scam over the years, yeah, I see it every day. Healthcare has evolved into one of the greatest scams in human history.
So what evidence would you give to support that idea?
Well, being a practicing physician, I see it every day. I see it with my own health insurance policy. I see it with everybody that walks through our front door. Everybody has growing deductibles, growing copays. The financial responsibility has been shifted from the insurance company to the patient, and less and less and less is being covered with their overall health care, while their expenses with their monthly premiums continue to climb. So we had this thing called the Affordable Care Act that was passed several years ago, that is turned into essentially anything but affordable, except for the lower class. For the most part, the middle class is who it was really passed for, and that middle class income of people are the ones, the working class, have discovered that it's anything but affordable, with the growing copays, the growing deductibles, and the elevated premiums, and the limited coverage available.
So is it the healthcare system or is it the insurance system that's the problem?
Well, they're one and the same. I mean, they're all kind of owned and they're all in bed together. The politicians with the companies, with the hospitals, they're all kind of it's all one big circle, just like the colleges are. It's all the same.
Yeah. Well, I know that my wife and I have not had traditional health insurance. I couldn't tell you the last time we had it. I'm trying to think when it would have been. I guess when I was a school teacher. I haven't taught school since 2011, so it's been that long. So since 2011, we started participating in something called Samaritan Ministries, which is like a health sharing thing.
Yeah.
This is not an endorsement of them, although we've had a good time. You know, it's been good for us. And but I, like, when we go to the doctor, like to a cold or something, they say, "Well, give me your insurance card." We always say we're self-pay. And then what happens is that what would have been $400, $500, it's like $100, $200 if we pay right there, which we always do. Like,
exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
we pay, and it's insane. Like, I recently went to the ER, and you and I haven't talked about this. I know we know each other. We're talking with Dr. Casey Bearden of Action Spine and Joint here in Nashville, and we've known each other for a while. And I'm honored to have him on the show today. But he is a chiropractor, practicing for over 30 years.
30 years.
30 years, man.
Same location, West Nashville.
So I went to work out that morning like I normally do, and walked and came back home, took a shower, was getting dressed. I was in the bathroom and I bent over a certain way, like nothing. And like electric shock went through my whole body, emanating from the lower back. And when I stood up, my left leg from my hip down to my knee, like it was aching from inside. It's the craziest thing ever. It was debilitating, dude. I had to go, all I could do is go get dressed, like completely myself getting dressed.
Yeah.
We had painters in the house. So it's not like I couldn't lay on my bed. Everything was covered up. So I just went into the next bedroom, Christy's office, and just laid on the floor. That's the only position I could get in. So I went to my chiropractor, Do you know Scott Schrader? We talked about this.
I don't know him.
Yeah.
No.
Well, he's in Gallatin. I've been going to him for
Yeah.
20 plus years. So anyway, I went to him and told him what happened, and he was very gentle and put me on the traction table and did all that. And he said, he tested me. He goes, the way this pain is working, you have to go get an MRI. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
So I went to ER, got an MRI, and they were afraid, as you probably know, that one of my discs had broken off and kind of a piece. But
Right.
ultimately, that didn't happen. I had 2 very bad herniations, one prolapsed and one hernia. And they also found a compound fracture in one of my vertebrae that has healed. So anyway, all this has happened.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. We haven't gotten the bill yet. We don't know what the bill's going to be.
Right.
But what'll happen is when we call and say, we're self-pay, I guarantee you they're going to knock half of it off right there, and I'll just write a check.
Yeah. So not a day goes by where I don't try to send someone out for an MRI, and invariably they've got some kind of health insurance, and they'll express a concern, especially the first half of the year when most deductibles have not been met. How much is that? Is that really necessary? Aren't MRIs like $1,500? Yes, and I can send you out for an MRI through your health insurance. We might have to wait 2 or 3 weeks to get approval. They may not approve it, and if they do, you'll have to pay pretty much that $1,500, whatever it is, the agreed upon contractual price. Or we can get an MRI tomorrow for a discounted price, self-pay, not use your insurance, for $350. Which would you like? Either way, if you use your insurance, you're going to have to pay more, or even if there's an 80-20 blend, your 20% is likely the same thing, if not maybe more, than a self-pay cash. And we're going to have to wait, and you may or may not get approved. Which would you like to do? A lot of times they'll say, let's not use their health insurance. And a lot of times when they come into my office just for a routine office visit, if they use their health insurance, their copay is more expensive than our cash pay. So that's kind of where I'm going. And my own health insurance for my wife and I, which we're perfectly healthy, hardly ever have seen a doctor at all, so we have no history. We still pay $1,100 a month for comprehensive coverage, and that's with a $10,000 deductible. And we have an HSA to cover the deductible part, thankfully, which is a little bit of a benefit because you get that from Uncle Sam. You don't get that from the health insurance companies. Yeah. But nonetheless, I mean, that's where our premiums are still astronomical for something that we don't even use. And I would have to have a catastrophic event happen in my life if I were to trigger me ever using that. So it's just dishing out a ton of money for something that you're not likely to ever use.
So what happened? I mean, where did we go wrong in this country? And I'm assuming this is not isolated, but we only have the experience of the United States. But where did it go from when you call Dr. Smith and he showed up at the house with his little black bag and saw little Susie and you paid him $25 or whatever it costs? I mean, how did we get to this place where it's so out of whack?
Well, I've been in practice long enough, 30 years, to see the transition of everything. And I was born, when I was born, if I'm going to date myself here, but I was born in the age to where the same doctor who took out your tonsils was the same doctor that delivered your child later on. And, long gone are those days. Now everybody specializes essentially, and they're having a hard time even in the medical schools recruiting people to go into general practice. That's kind of dying off. The nurse practitioners and the PAs are coming in. But I don't know the year, but I would say the late 90s is when managed care started to infiltrate. And it used to be when I started practice, everybody had an 80-20 insurance policy with a $200 deductible and a $5 or $10 copay, and you could go wherever you wanted to and you weren't controlled. Well, as managed care slowly started to infiltrate over the years, insurance premiums have continued to escalate. Insurance coverage has continued to diminish, and premiums have just skyrocketed. And the insurance companies, the whole model of insurance has been slowly shifting the financial responsibility away from them over to the consumer. And as long as the consumer tolerates that, the politicians and the insurance companies will always be in cahoots together, because that system kind of feeds itself economically and synergistically, and until somebody, votes accordingly, and changes that system. But the masses have to come together to do that.
So what does it mean, managed care? What does that mean?
Managed care is essentially where, a group of insurance companies come together to manage and control the costs. And, it's for good reason. I mean, healthcare can get out of control. There can be a lot of abuses in the system if you let it run rampant. So there had to be some kind, and there was a lot of abuses in the 80s and 90s, when there was no really control or managed care. So managed care, there was good intentions. It needed to happen to recalibrate a system that was getting out of control, but that pendulum really swung hard to the other side with overly tight controls. Now you have to jump through, especially the providers have to jump through so many hoops to get things approved for the end user, which is the patient. And that patient has to sit back now and wait and pay more and more and more, with just a lot of inconveniences, all to control costs for the investors, the fiduciary people on the other end.
Yeah.
Whether it be hospitals or like I said, the investors.
Well, it's insane to me, and we'll get off this topic and move on to something else in a minute, but it's insane to me that the people making the healthcare decisions are not healthcare professionals.
That's right. Yeah, you've got a $20 employee on the other line that has no training whatsoever, just checking the boxes. How they get away with that, I don't know.
It's insane.
There's the only people who lose are certainly not the providers, really, at the end of the day. It's the end user, the consumer. So, I mean, your health care has to be your responsibility. If you put it off to an insurance company or a doctor, you're going to pay the price for it at some point down the road.
Yeah. I've been referred to a neurosurgeon to look at my back, and I am not interested, nor am I necessarily a candidate for back surgery because of this injury. But I wanted to get in as soon as possible because I was hurting so bad. Because I thought maybe you can give me an injection. I'd do something to help because I was hurting so bad. Like today, I can move around, I can walk, where 5 days ago I couldn't at all. It's been that bad. Well, here's the thing: the guy the neurosurgery unit that they suggested or referred me to didn't have an appointment for weeks.
Yeah.
And so my wife just started calling neurosurgery clinics, and she found one that could get me in. But then they said, we don't take self-pay patients.
Wow.
I'm like, I will walk in and you could swipe my card before I leave. And they're like, no, we don't do that. That actually happened to me. And now that I'm thinking about it, I was in California and I got a bad case of vertigo. Never had it before in my life. And I got my apprentice to take me to a walk-in clinic, and then at a hospital. It's actually on the side of the hospital. And they said, what's your insurance? I said, I'm self-pay. We can't help you. I said, I have cash in my pocket. I will give you, just help me. And they're like, no. I just even understand. Now, the other side of this, because you're a chiropractor, is that your profession, your side of the medical field has for many decades been viewed as not legitimate medicine. Now, I don't see that. You don't see that. And it's not that way mainly today. But my guy at the ER and my MD that I went to see after this, I told him what I was doing with the chiropractor. He's like, well, I think you should go see a neurosurgeon and a physical therapist. So what's the deal with chiropractors not being respected in the practice?
I've got a lot of, several friends that are orthopedic surgeons in the medical arena, and I asked that question one time, I'll never forget. Good friend of mine, very renowned surgeon here in Nashville. I was out to dinner with him one evening, and I asked that question. And he said, Casey, it's not that we don't believe in what you do. We just don't understand what you do. And all of our training defaults one way, and that's to physical therapy. And once again, most of the doctors are in facilities where the physical therapist is in there with them. So that's kind of where they're going to default, whether it be convenience or just really what they understand. But 30, 40 years ago, we didn't have all the scientific research studies that we have now. Now we have just stacks and stacks and stacks of research studies that are ironically done by the medical profession proving what we've been saying for hundreds of years works. And so now chiropractic, whereas it used to be considered alternative, is now more complementary medicine. It's not really alternative now because such a large percentage of the population uses it. So, I mean, at any given year, statistics show over 100 million people are using chiropractors anymore because, well, now it's so mainstream that most people know that, hey, when I get in an auto accident or I have some kind of musculoskeletal problem, that a general practitioner is only going to be able to do so much. They treat tummy aches, flus, sinuses. They don't really treat spinal related problems. So I'm going to go see the chiropractor. So over the year, of course, with social media and internet and everybody, you know, getting on YouTube and seeing all these chiropractic adjustments being done, the generations are just evolving to something more conservative and something that just makes more sense than drugs, needles, and surgery all the time. And so it's just grown, and every decade it's just going to geometrically continue to grow to the point to where, I mean, chiropractors in a lot of places, a lot of my patients consider their chiropractors their primary care physician first and foremost.
Well, like I said, I've been going to Scott, Dr. Schrader, for 20 plus years, and I didn't really know anything about chiropractic care. He moved in, started his practice, and we started a friendship. He goes, "Yeah, you gotta come see me. I'll give you a deal." And I'm like, "Okay." So I've been going for 20 years, and there have been times, man, I'll go in there and just absolutely can't walk. I'm in pain, and he'll, you know, crack me up or whatever he does, and it's like, oh, that's good. I actually had started getting some deep bone pain in my right arm here, and I went in for an upper, a neck and upper back adjustment, and as soon as we got done, I was like, oh, I'm good. Like, it was just, it's such a cool thing. But here's what I want to, I'm kind of transition into entrepreneurship, because this show is listened to mostly by entrepreneurs. Most doctors, practitioners, whether it's a lawyer, doctor, whatever, most of them are good at their practice in terms of what they do, but they're terrible at business.
Right.
You are an exception to that rule, because you've built a killer, very successful, valuable practice. But not only that, you've built a very large portfolio in real estate, et cetera, as an entrepreneur on the side. Why do you think most practitioners suck at the entrepreneurship or the business side?
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
As an entrepreneur, I know that you have to deal with sales on a regular basis. I mean, every entrepreneur does. And if you aren't paying attention to sales as an entrepreneur, you're not going to be an entrepreneur for very long. But I've got a sponsor of this show called Dub that helps you bring the personal back to sales. If you want to figure out how to improve content creation, improve client trust, improve your sales process, decrease the sales cycle, because we all know time kills deals. If you want to increase client bookings and increase conversions, you need to take a look at Dub. There's a special offer for Dub for listeners to The Root of All Success at therealjasonduncan.com/Dub, and that's DUBB. What Dub does, I've been using this for years. I'm a huge fan, and I'm so honored that they're our primary sponsor of the podcast. But they have helped over 60,000 businesses around the world communicate better, to make sales easier, to make sales more personal. And Dub is built for growing teams. I mean, you can set up video emails, you can set up custom onboarding, you can do admin reporting, anything you need around video and sales and automation. Dub is there. You can try Dub now. Your conversions to sales are waiting. All you got to do is go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub. And there you're going to get 2 weeks for free to try Dub. Plus, you're going to get 50% off your first 2 months of Dub. You can't beat that. So go check it out. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
I mean, unless it's something that they took the bull by the horns and did on their own. You're just not introduced to that in any kind of schooling. $300,000 and 8 years later, you know absolutely nothing really about how to even practice, much less how to expand beyond that. And I've found pretty much I think if you ask any doctor this, it's almost impossible to retire independently wealthy if you're in healthcare anymore.
Really?
Doctors just don't make the kind of money they used to make. They used to call the 80s the Mercedes 80s, because doctors were, drove Mercedes and they were members of the country club and everything. And now you got a lot of doctors out there that struggle to make a school teacher's salary when you look at the amount of hours they have to work. And so if that's all they're doing, you better be doing something else on the side if you're going to have any hopes of ever having, retiring independently wealthy. If you're staying in medicine and healthcare, even as a brain surgeon, they just don't make the kind of money they used to make. And so I kind of knew that from the beginning, and I've always had the mindset of multiple streams of income pretty much from day one. And so, when I set out to do what I was going to do in the world of healthcare, I knew I was going to be doing other things on the side as well, mainly real estate, because since I was in college, I owned 2 different homes in college. I'd rent one out and live in the other. And I kind of pretty much found out early when I was my early 20s that, wow, it's the way to go. The real estate, this really works.
Who taught you that?
I kind of figured it out on my own. I mean, I was just read a bunch of books, and I've always been, I don't know, I just remember my 9th grade teacher always shaking her finger saying, "You're an overachiever." I could tell. And so I was just always one of these that was just, reaching and looking for something bigger, and just listening to all the gurus in the different industries. And I remember Carlton Sheets back
I remember him.
back in the mid-90s, hearing him at 2 o'clock in the morning. He was the big real estate guru. And God, thinking back then, that's probably where it all kind of started as far as my
Really? Carlton Sheets.
vision. Yeah, I remember getting his course for $200 on the cassette tapes and listening to every single minute, hours and hours and hours, over and over and over again. And I can't say that I figured it out from there, but that's kind of where it spurred me to really having a vision of where to go in the future. And
Is he still alive?
no, I don't think so. But
He was. I think it was him that said, "I've made millions in real estate, but I've made hundreds of millions teaching people real estate." Was that him?
Probably
that said
so.
that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about 35 years ago. I remember when I was 19 years old listening to him and just thinking, wow, they don't teach this in school, and there's something to this.
So speaking of that, why do you believe that? And maybe this is an improper question because it's not true anymore. But why do you believe that medical schools? You graduated from Palmer, right?
Yeah.
So why do you believe that medical schools aren't also having a track for business for the docs? Or is that true that they don't have it?
They have maybe one course that's very small on just an introductory type of thing to just the fundamentals of running a business, but that by no means doesn't teach you anything. But you know what? I think if you were to ask a CPA or a lawyer or anybody coming out of medical, anybody in any kind of professional occupation, I think pretty much everybody would tell you, hey, whenever my CPA, for example, when I graduated as a CPA, I knew about 2% of what I needed to know to succeed in that given vocation. 98% of everything I had to figure out on my own. Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate, but I mean, again, school, what do they say? Never let your schooling get in the way of your education.
That's right.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just the world we live in, and that's why I think education has been minimized, and there's so many other people out there making, just in the trades, making a whole lot more money with 2 years of trade school than somebody with 8 years of a professional degree.
Well, I think there's an opportunity here because there's a coming drought for physicians, as I hear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know you're closer to the industry than I am, but People aren't going to medical school like they used to. I don't know how different it is with chiropractic as a specialty, but they're not going. So we're gonna be 20, 30 years away from not having enough medical doctors, not having enough surgeons, because they're seeing what we're talking about is you can't make the money that you're promised, and it's you got not providers, but you get the insurance companies, you got the government that's interfering. So it would make sense to me that if these universities, like what you went to, these medical universities would say, look, guys, it is required. You have to do a full semester, maybe a year's worth of schooling on, all right, this is the basics of setting up a business. This is the basics of understanding financial accounting. This is the basics of marketing. This is the basics of hiring practices.
Yeah, you would think, but they're not there.
Why do you think they're not investing in that?
It's not a part of their protocol, their paradigm, and it's just institutional thinking. I can only speculate as to why that is, but maybe they just figure, hey, there's plenty of that to learn when you get out on your own, and you're going to pick and choose which direction in life you're going to go. And we specialize in what we specialize in, and finances is not one of them. That's all I can.
So when you look back 30 years ago when you started your practice, compared to what you know today, what percent of what you need to know did you know at that time?
When I graduated?
Yeah, when you started your practice, compared to where you are today, like if today's 100%, which is, we know it's not, there's still more you can learn, but let's assume today's 100%. What percent were you day one?
I would say no more than 5% of what I mean, 95% of everything I've learned has been since then, and just, getting dirty in the field.
And your net worth back then, who knows what it was, but it was significantly nothing then, and it's a lot today. But you did it through your practice, even though your wealth building isn't in the practice; it's outside the practice.
That's right.
But you leveraged the income.
100%.
Tell people how to do this, because this is where I think people mess up. And I'm a business coach, among other things, but this is where all of us, no matter what we're doing, doctor, chiropractor, dentist, roofer, painter, it's like income won't make you wealthy. It's what you do with the income that makes you wealthy.
It's how you manage and leverage it all. Just like time, you got to do the same thing with money. And I think it's just, you just got to get in there and figure it out. And I don't think there's academically you can figure it out without just going through some experience. And really, there's nothing more valuable than mentorship. Finding somebody that's already done it and replicate what they've done versus reinventing the wheel. And then, a lot of it has to do with luck. You better hope that the ball bounces your way along the way. Cross your fingers that things turn out. And there's no linear straight line to doing it. There's going to be ups and downs, ebbs and flows, and you're going to win some, lose some. And God knows I've lost, thankfully not as much as I've won deals, and just concepts, but I've had a ton of setbacks, like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get over this. That was huge, enormous loss. And I know you have as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't had a huge loss, you're probably not really an entrepreneur yet. I mean, and I had a mentor that used to tell me this. I mean, my biggest one happened just in the last year, but I had a mentor that used to tell me what I just said to you. He's like, man, if you haven't been sued, you haven't been bankrupt or whatever, like he was listing all this stuff. He said, if you haven't had those things happen to you, you're probably not a real entrepreneur. And here I was going, dude, I've been in magazines. I've been awarded national awards for how good I am. And then, bam, it hit me in the face. And now on the backside of that, looking and like, now I'm an entrepreneur. Now I know what this means. What big things have happened in your 30 years that you look back and go, man, that sucked, but here's what I learned from it?
What big things? Well, I mean, the stock market, I was there in the early 2000s, heavily vested when everything crashed. Again, 2008, I had just, to this day, I don't understand how I made it through that, but I had just 2 years prior to that gotten into the commercial real estate market. And I just remember some sleepless nights in 2008, 2009. I even called up my realtor one day and said, you're going to have to dump these properties. I'm about to file BK on this.
Uh-oh.
And somehow I got out of it and made it through So, I mean, certainly that, and as much as you want to give people the benefit of the doubt in certain investments, you gotta be careful with that because even though somebody may come across as having good intentions, you tell yourself a lie long enough, you'll start to believe it. And so, I don't know. I've just always found, in hindsight, especially, look back and thought I would never do that again. And what was I thinking? Doesn't even make sense now. And looking back in the rearview mirror, I would just never go down that road again. From a financial point of view, not necessarily deal making, but so yeah. I mean,
So the bankruptcy threat that you had, that was in '08?
it was '08, yeah.
So you were heavily leveraged in real estate?
Heavily leveraged, yeah. I had been, I think my first acquisition into commercial real estate, it was 2004 was my first property. And then I bought another one in 2006 or 7. So I had two large, commercial real estate is not like residential. It's an entirely different animal. It costs a lot of money from a leverage point of view just to get in the door with the bankers and just with a lot of money out of pocket to get into your first commercial property. And so I had just gotten into my first two, and fortunately my practice at that time, I had been in practice for a little over a decade, just like you said, allowed me to leverage myself and somehow hang on through the storm of 2 or 3 really, really hard years, whereas a lot of people, they didn't have that leverage that I had, that foundation by that time to hang on. And now when I look back, the properties that I had at that time that I almost went under, they're thriving now.
Are you, and we won't have to talk about specific numbers, are you making more money from the practice or from your real estate?
Definitely from the real estate.
Yeah.
Doesn't even compare.
And so you've been in real estate now 20 years?
20 years, right at 20 years, because my first property acquisition was 2004, yeah.
So you got in, so 20 years ago, you started in real estate. You were leveraging your higher than the normal, income because you were a chiropractor, you're a doctor. Mm-hmm. So you're making more than the average bear, but you're leveraging that into something else. And today, When did it flip for you? When did your income, your passive income from real estate exceed your active income as a doctor?
I would say not till pretty recently.
Oh, okay.
I'd say post-COVID, right at post-COVID. Not that COVID had anything to do with it. It was just kind of a time factor where one kind of surpassed the other.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what if you look back on all the things that you've accomplished and how successful you've been with the practice for 30 years, your real estate portfolio is throwing off more cash now than you're making as a doctor. What is the one thing, if you had to isolate it, what's the one thing that you think has allowed you to be successful more than anything else?
Persistence. It's kind of like the water flowing down the river between the rocks. That water is going to find its way, whether it's over, under, around, or through the rocks. And there's just so many hard knocks in life that's going to just, keep knocking you sideways, and you just got to get back on that horse and ride. They say that entrepreneurs are the only people who work an 80-hour work week to avoid a 40-hour work week.
That's true.
Sometimes it's lonely being an entrepreneur. So many people don't see the hard knocks behind the scenes and really the sleepless nights.
What caused you the most sleepless nights in your career?
I used to, just the wheels start spinning. It used to be where the wheels would spin and keep me from sleeping. Now it wakes me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But it's just, especially when you have several different entities and just a lot of moving parts going on, the wheels are just always spinning. And I've learned not to really worry so much any longer. So I don't really worry from a fear point of view. It's just more strategic thinking now than it is from being afraid what's around the corner.
How do you, Dr. Casey Bearden, how do you define the word success?
Success, I certainly don't think it's a destination. I think it's a journey.
Yeah.
And that's a relative thing. I think Success really is when you get to the point to where you've got the freedom. I think success and freedom are probably synonymous in most cases. When you've got the freedom to wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I'm going to do this with this person on my own timeline and however I want to do it. I think that's the ultimate success, which is the ultimate independence and freedom.
And you're there.
I'm getting close. I certainly don't feel like I'm not successful.
Yeah. Well, you're successful.
I still think there's a ways to go.
You know what I think too is it's like, I think our wives, and I know your lovely wife. I think our wives. I don't know about her, but I think our wives are the last person that really realize how successful we are when we're building businesses. They're like, oh, really? Like we did that? Like we have this much money? Like we own this much stuff? Now she's involved with you in the practice, right? Every day.
She is, thankfully. She does all the, in my opinion, all the dirty work, get your fingernails dirty work. I mean, I just think numbers and stuff like bookkeeping and the high level stuff, I think that's high level stuff. I think what I do is just comes so easy and natural. And after so many years, I don't think you ever master your craft, but I do think you get to the pinnacle of not necessarily achievement, but the pinnacle of what you have to contribute and offer through your craft after so many decades of doing it. I just think you figure out so much. But then again, with that said, the more you learn, the more you figure out, the more you realize you have to learn. But still, compared to, like you asked earlier, compared to when I started, I have so much more to offer, the people that we serve, whether it be in real estate or healthcare or my own family, than I did 20, 30 years ago. But you never really master it or get to the point of where you go, okay, I'm done. I think when you do that, you go 6 feet under.
I'm going to ask you this question. This is going to kind of be our final question for our conversation. I'm going to give you some time to think about it. What, if you're speaking to an entrepreneur, a group of entrepreneurs listening to this show, and you want to think back to the number one piece of advice that you could give someone, like if you want to be successful, this is what you got to do. And you can't use persistence because you've already talked about that. So it's got to be something else. I'm going to give you a second to think about it while I tell everybody who sponsored this show. This show is sponsored by Dubb. Go to Dubb at therealjasonduncan.com/Dubb. It's spelled D-U-B-B. Dubb is a platform that helps you win more sales, convert more prospects into buyers by helping you set up an entire system to put the personal back in sales. So if you want to send a video email, this is the best part of their platform as far as I'm concerned. I've been with them since the beginning. You can record a video right on your desktop or right from your phone, and you can email that video directly to someone. Now you're thinking, well, I could do that with any of the video services. No, this actually puts the video right inside the email that they can watch, and then you can set up all these things that happen after they watch the video. Maybe you want them to go see something else after they watch that. Dubb is fantastic, and I've got a special offer for you since they are the sponsor of the show. And if you want this special offer, all you got to do is go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dubb. That's D-U-B-B. Check them out. You're going to be glad that you did. So Casey, what do you think is your number one thing that an entrepreneur should do to be successful?
I think you should figure out what you're good at, and instead of following what people say sometimes your passion may not necessarily be where your talents are and what you're naturally good at. So I think people will be happier 20, 30 years down the road if they figure out early on what their knack is in versus what they may be necessarily passionate about. And at the end of the day, I think you boil everything down to the core fundamentals. And as long as you can sit down and draw up a one-sentence vision and have a mission statement, and then think of what your personal core values would look like and feel like, and describe those in a one sentence, very simplistic version of what it is that you wake up with or for every morning. Because I think they say that the vast majority of people have heart attacks between Sunday evening and Monday morning. Really? Because they dread what they're about to wake up and go to work to do. And they've been doing it for so many years. they're stressed out about it because in all likelihood they didn't follow or they didn't have a mission statement of why they're doing what they're doing or a vision. They had, they marched to the same orders their entire life, and although they may have been good at it, they really never had a wider vision or a reason why. I mean, if you wake up every morning and you just keep trudging along just for a paycheck, to me, that's just the quickest way to burn out and high level stress. But when you have a vision and a mission of why you're doing something, whether you're an entrepreneur or you work for an assembly line company, I think that's the ultimate key to really finding your happiness and success in life.
Well, Casey, thank you so much for being on the show, man. And it's an honor to
Thank you for
have
having
you
me.
here. And, we've known each other for a while now, but it's cool to have this conversation in a more specific, like we're trying to get to some points. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Everybody else out there, thank you for watching the show. Now, in just a second, you're going to hear the guy at the end of the show, my voiceover guy. He's going to tell you what to do. So make sure you pay attention to that. Don't skip out yet. And if you haven't left a review and subscribed to the show, it'd be a big, big help to me if you do that. It doesn't cost you anything, and it certainly helps out the show. So go hit the subscribe button. Make sure you leave a review. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, you need to take a look, because if you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes or Apple Music, whatever they call it these days, you're missing out, because we're here at the Ariston, which is a cocktail and cigar bar here in downtown Nashville. And they've been, we're honored to be here in their place today, so you can kind of see where we're sitting in their private members only area. So come check out the Ariston in downtown Nashville. Tune in again next time. I'm going to talk with yet another very successful person about his or her journey to success. Until then, as always, I'm the real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.